Good morning, gamers. I'm Gregory. This is 1 in 20 D&D. Welcome to DnDaily number 55. And warning ahead of time, this one might be a little disjointed. I'm feeling a little all over the place today. Got a lot of stuff going through my mind, so forgive me ahead of time. I'm just going to let you know that before I even start rambling on about silliness in gaming. Alright, so here's the first thing that's on my mind. I binge watched Genlock by Rooster Teeth the other day. 2 nights ago I did this. And it's like one season, like 8 episodes with a pretty, like an hour-long opener or something like that. I watched the first half of that, and then the next day I kind of like just flew through the rest of it because, yes, it's that good, in my opinion. So Genlock is, okay, if you don't know Rooster Teeth, if you're not into anime, this might not be that interesting, so bear with me. I'll talk about other gaming and D&D stuff. However, I'm going to tie it with RPGs because, again, I've been playing Battletech with my buddies every couple weeks on Saturdays, where you probably have seen some of my videos. We do the Battletech RPG that we've slightly homebrewed, modified just a little bit so that it's easier for Brett to run it for us. And wow, our last session was super fun, really, and it was cool. We actually had our biggest group of all of it. Like, everybody was actually at the game for a change. Usually we're missing, 1 or 2 of the guys that we play with. So Genlock, what is this? So Rooster Teeth, Genlock. Rooster Teeth makes some great animation, funny stuff, comedy. They do all sorts of weird things that are connected to gaming. One thing you might be familiar with is Red versus Blue. Red versus Blue is like, from what I understand, I think I've only seen like maybe a clip or 2, is that it's like the Halo characters, and it's these goofy skits and a story of the red and the blue team. It's this idea of like, you have 2 teams, right? So it's something with that. I don't even know all of it. It's just one of the things that I know from them is popular. The other that's popular is Ruby. And Ruby is R-W-B-Y. It's not Ruby, R-U-B-Y. It's actually R-W-B-Y. Ruby. Ruby, and it's red, white, black, yellow, basically, which is the 4 primary characters in the story. And that's all I'm going to tell you. It is a super badass, like, it is martial arts and cool weapons and cyber tech and all kinds of really neat, maybe not cyber tech, high technology. Let's call it high tech stuff. And it all mashed together, and it's just cool. The animation style at the very beginning was super unique and very like cutting edge, and it drove how the series looks now, where they're like in season 7, or I think they're in season 6 or about to do 7, something like that. Super awesome. And then they just released Genlock, and like I said, I binge watched like 8 episodes because it's that good. It's nothing. It's like other stuff you may have seen. If you're into mecha, if you're into like, I don't know, like Voltron, Robotech, any of these kind of like giant robot stuff, you'll probably dig it. Okay? It reminds me a little bit of Mech Warrior. It starts out a little bit like Mech Warrior, which again, Mech Warrior, Robotech, Battletech, these are all sort of these interlocking names for the same sort of genre. So I was just, anyway, totally got into it, really dug it. If you like that sci-fi fantasy mash, then check it out. It's pretty killer. That's all I'm going to say about Genlock. Go check it out. And then now what else? So I also am really tripping out this morning because, are you guys familiar with Critical Role's series Between the Sheets? They've done, Brian W. Foster, who is the interviewer that does Talks Machina, which is the talk show, quote unquote, where Brian asks questions that the audience we critters submit, and asks it of the cast of the show. So like Matt and Laura and Travis and all the others will sit down different times as different groups. Sometimes it's all of them. And Brian Foster asks questions, and they just goof and laugh and make jokes and have a good time talking about the campaign. So it's fascinating. If you love Critical Role, you're interested in the campaign, they basically are doing what the Talking Dead is, what Talking Dead is to The Walking Dead, if you're familiar with those shows. Vox Machina is to Critical Role and Vox Machina and The Mighty Nine. And so Brian W. Foster, once they were in the process of creating Critical Role as sort of its own studio, I guess, or its own production group, they started creating Between the Sheets, and Brian started having a more intimate interview with the individuals. And again, this is the cast of Critical Roles where he started. Well, in season 2 of Between the Sheets, he's just interviewing all kinds of people from the greater community. People that, might be somehow connected with gaming or so forth. The first person he interviewed in season 2 was actually Logic, who's a rapper that you may or may not be familiar with. If you're not, his stuff is awesome. You probably are familiar with at least one of his tracks or albums, and I apologize because I can't think of the title of it right now. Forgive me. I'll try to get it and include it in tomorrow so I can just, touch, if you're interested. Anyway, Logic, check him out. He's an amazing rap artist, and happens to be a D&D guy, and happens to be friends with some of the people in Critical Role, as Brian Foster and so forth. So, great interview. Well, today, I started watching one of the interviews that I had heard about and was super excited about. He started interviewing Chris Perkins. So I just barely, I watched maybe the first 15, 20 minutes of the interview at the most, and it's fascinating. Chris Perkins is such a nice guy. He's so down to earth. He's a Canadian dude, which I don't think I actually realized. And now he's an American because he moved to America like 20-something years ago to work for TSR. If you don't know what TSR is, let me educate you. TSR, so Dungeons and Dragons. First there was Chainmail. Chainmail was this thing that a couple guys shared to play war games. That morphed into Dungeons and Dragons, which in 1974, Gary Gygax and a few others published Dungeons and Dragons, the first, again, pamphlets of Dungeons and Dragons. TSR bought Dungeons and Dragons, I guess, or D&D became TSR, something like that. I'm not exactly sure of all of the intricacies, but TSR became the big name that was producing all the box sets were TSR and all that. Lots of the modules and stuff were TSR early on. So the first series of books was all TSR for years. Then TSR morphed into Wizards of the Coast. Wizards of the Coast also released Magic. Magic was hugely successful, boosted Wizards of the Coast. So at the same time that Magic was getting a boost, that helped Dungeons and Dragons to get a boost, which is cool. They came out with 4th edition. Now we're in 5th edition. And a lot of that is, at least within D&D, Christopher Perkins is responsible for. Not only that, he's an amazing DM and just seems like an all-around awesome dude, like the kind of guy I would love to get to know. And the interview is just like, I'm hanging on every word because I want to know more about him. I wish I could sit down and have this kind of a conversation with him. So if you haven't checked out Between the Sheets, and you like that format, or you would like to know more about, especially the cast from Critical Role, it's such a neat way to understand, like, how did they get here? How did they become a great, voice actor? How did they get into that field? How did they end up on the show of Critical Role? How I don't even like calling it a show. In the game, I should say. How did they end up in the game, which then became Critical Role as it is today? Yeah, it's history. I guess I'm into this stuff right now. It's been fascinating, and wow. I guess that's what I felt like talking about today. You never know. It's gonna be ups, it's gonna be downs, left, right, and sideways. And remember, if you're adventuring, you always need, that's like a tip, like remember when you enter a room, look around, left, right, up, down, check the floor, check the ceiling, check the walls, look behind you frequently. Remember that. That's an important tip for gaming. So, that's it for today. I have nothing else to say today. I appreciate you stopping in. I'm Gregory. Thank you, and I'll see you at a table someday. But until then, keep rolling 20s.